Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. It's been a while. I'm re-recording this entire video because I didn't like the audio quality last time. I was too close to the mic. So, we got a tech demo. It's really important to emphasize it's a tech demo. I've seen people already claiming it's a gameplay demo. It is not. It is a tech demo. Big difference. Namely, this is showing off what the engine can do, not what the gameplay is definitively going to be like. It's an advert in parts for the new Unreal Engine. So just keep that in mind, that some of the animations and the systems and stuff they talk about, while they will likely be in the game, they will probably not be shown necessarily to the same extent that they are seen in this. Funnily enough, a lot of this demo gives me Oblivion demo vibes. Although at least in this version, I'm actually not even sure if the entire thing isn't just one long cutscene, because like how many times the game cuts away from the actual gameplay. So yeah, just keep that in mind, that it's like, while a lot of these interactions, like these game interactions and stuff, are really cool, just keep in mind that this is, you know, very much a vertical slice. This is not just like definitively how all NPCs are going to be in the final game. As I said, like here's a video by Patrician TV, or a specific section on a video done by Patrician TV, which talks about the Oblivion demo, which I get a lot of very similar vibes from watching this, and he kind of breaks down there, you know, what things from the demo made it into the final game. I feel like a very similar video will probably end up being made about this tech demo. But anyway, I'm not super interested in the technical side of all of this. I'm going to talk about some of the stuff we see. Like, for example, starting out with this crest of Kovir and Povis. It's very important to specify that it is the two regions together, as each region has their own specific crest. The Kovir and Povis crest is basically an amalgamation of the Povis, Narok, and Talgar crests. I'm not sure what the crest with the arm is from. I couldn't see that on some other places, so I'm not sure, but I did only a bit of research, admittedly, into it. There's also this document. Now, the Witcher language, like the written language, can actually be translated. The issue is that it is written in Polish and then translated into the Witcher text. So to actually translate this, you have to translate it from the Witcher language to Polish, and then from Polish to English. And I don't know anything about Polish to be able to translate it. So I'm not going to bother, that's for someone else to do. The Manticore itself, though, looks very nice. I'm hoping that this isn't going to be like the Griffin, which got teased and set up a lot in their trailers, but really was only just confined more or less to the tutorial location. I actually hope we get a couple of quests building up the Manticore. Like, these are tough enemies. In the tabletop game, they are incredibly tough. And in Thronebreaker, you had to use a small army to take one of them down. So I'm hoping that we got like that we get a couple of quests to recruit maybe a couple of allies, set up a trap somewhere that will get it off the ground, onto the ground, so that it can't, you know, use the ability to fly as its way of getting away from you, and has, you know, a couple of allies just helping Ciri out in this battle. Kelpie is there. Nice to see that she got a new horse from named after one of the ones from the books. I guess she's following in her dad's footsteps on reusing names, and it looks cool. It's got muscles. It's a horse. I don't know what you want me to say about it. The only things really I can say, I guess, is that the mounting animation kind of looks a bit like something from Red Dead Redemption 2. So I wonder if they're going to take more from that game. I feel like Red Dead Redemption and Witcher are much easier to compare to each other than, say, Red Dead Redemption and Cyberpunk. Even to some degree, Cyberpunk and GTA can't really be completely compared, but like Red Dead and Witcher, I think, can very much carry a similar vibe to each other in how they can mechanically function. Especially Red Dead 2 with the tonic making could be a nice way of, could be an interesting way of taking some inspiration for potion making, but that's its own conversation. There is also this moment when Ciri gives a homeless person a coin. I suppose that means that we've got some sort of interact button to interact with NPCs when casually walking around, but we don't have a HUD to see that, so who knows. But it's a nice little thing, and I do hope something small like that makes its way in. Regardless, though, we got confirmation that this is in fact Kovir. No idea where these mountains are. Initially, I thought they could be the the Dragon Mountains, and that the settlement in the distance could have been Eadgainvel? And Eadgainvel? Sure, we'll pretend that's how you pronounce it. A Shard of Ice. From the short story A Shard of Ice. The first mention of the Wild Hunt actually is in that short story. It's a much more northern settlement, but no. That is Lan Exeter in the distance. We'll get to Lan Exeter in a minute, but yeah, so we can assume that these are not the Dragon Mountains. These could be the Koviri Mountains, which are mentioned once in one of the books, but I don't know. The Koviri Mountains feels a little bit like it could be a bit of an obscure one to pull from, but otherwise they'll probably just get their own name in the game. It's fine. I've never seen mountains that look like this. I know the CDPR were taking some reference images in some other places around, I think it was Eastern Europe. So I'm going to just assume that there are mountains that look like this. They look very cool. Don't you love my reviewing of the environment? Now, one of the things that is kind of interesting when she gets down to the town is that you can see this dwarven guard. They seem to be dressed like the other city guards, or the town guards, which I think is really interesting, because, like, we don't really see much of non-human guards in the Witcher world. Even with Nilfgaard, where, you know, the races are all equal to each other, we never saw elven soldiers or dwarven soldiers or anything like that. I mean, also gender equality is complete in Nilfgaard, and until Gwent, I don't think we saw a single female Nilfgaardian soldier. So it'll be interesting to see if they are actually going to expand a little bit on more diverse soldiers and troops, especially in Kovir, where a lot of their forces are mercenary based, like Pretty Kitty. It would be interesting to see if they potentially open up a little bit more diversity there, because they're no longer looking necessarily at militaries, but at mercenaries, which are obviously different. It's a minor detail. It'll be interesting to see how this is incorporated into the wider I guess, political sphere of Kovir and its relationship with non-humans. Ciri herself, we get a little bit more of her voice acting here. She is a little bit more witty and a little bit more casual than Geralt is, and I actually kind of like that. She sort of reminds me of, or I guess not reminds me, but she kind of fits how I imagine Griffin Witchers would act and talk. Griffin Witchers were spared a lot of the, or they weren't necessarily spared, but they got a lot more help through the trauma of the Trial in the Grasses and a lot of the training, and Griffin Witches are basically the same when it comes to emotional states as your average person. They don't really carry that same sort of alien feeling or the emotional distance that you would get with other Witchers. And Ciri kind of gives me that vibe, although her accent is less pronounced than it used to be, at least if memory serves, which is kind of a shame. I actually kind of liked that she had a more, like, heavy accent. Lastly, this brings us on to Lan Exeter. Now, I've actually, despite how brief it is, I actually have a fair amount to say about Lan Exeter. For one, it's not really what I imagined. Lan Exeter, the way that it was described in the books, was effectively like a... I've got a lot of background noise now. So Lan Exeter was basically described in the books as being like a northern Venice. You had the Great Canal, and that was the main way that you would navigate around. If you've played Assassin's Creed 2, it would kind of be a bit like that, where you've got the little boats that you can ride around and people who ferry you back and forth across the city through the Great Canal. Yeah, it was a very water-based city in a way. On top of that, its buildings, they were taxed by their width more than anything. So you ended up with a lot of very like thin buildings, but they could end up being quite tall, and it was quite cool. That doesn't seem to have carried across, but that's obviously by looking at it from a distance. Potentially those elements will still be there, although I wouldn't be surprised if they don't do the whole thin building thing. I mean, the canal is more memorable than the taxation policies of Kovir, like, you know. But it is like a really unique design. It's, as I said, it's more mountainous and more vertical than I would have imagined the city being, but it's designed that the fact it takes a lot from sort of like Russian, almost like the Kremlin's design, does make it stand out a lot, and I'm really interested to see how like the city on the ground looks, because it looks not only just unique for a Witcher city, but it looks unique even for like most fantasy cities. So I think it's gonna be a really cool place to explore. I do kind of hope that they find a way to incorporate the canal into more stuff. Like, I don't know if this is a very common thing in other parts of the world, but in the UK we've got these like boat houses. If you've watched the like Wallace and Gromit Christmas film, Revenge Most Foul, if you've seen that film, you'll probably remember in the climax the sort of boat chase. A lot of those are very common around England, and one of the things we have is, even in cities and such like Bath, we'll have these locks that you can use to basically take you put the big boat inside a lock, the water either fills up or drains, and it can then that way move you along a hillside or various other sort of inclines and such that would be hard to do in a boat like that. I don't know how possible it is to do in a video game, but it would be really cool to have something like that within the city, and having the canal work like that. Then again, this is a game where your main form of navigation or transportation would be via horse. So potentially they don't want to really build a huge chunk of one of their main settings to be reliant on you not using a horse and either walking, swimming, or taking a boat, because it's quite likely that none of those will be faster than your horse. But it, funnily enough, brings me into a conversation that I was having at work before I even saw that this demo was a thing. It was talking about Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, Vampire the Masquerade in general, about canon breaks. I've recently played Bloodlines for the first time. It's a good game, and I can see it become like how it became the format that a lot of future RPGs would use. That game though did a lot of changes from the LA by Night source book, which I have recently been reading. Various people and barons vanished. The Baron of Santa Monica was replaced with Vorman. The Baron of Hollywood also was replaced. There was all sorts of big changes that occurred. The only character from the LA by Night source book, which came out about 5 years before Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, was Smiling Jack. That was really the only character that carried over. I've got the fucking tractor in the background again. I'm gonna ignore that this time. And it was interesting to look at that and go, like, you know, we've got all of this lore that's here, and they ignore a chunk of it. Not all of it, the history remains mostly the same. But they change a bunch of stuff to fit the game. And it's one of those things of like, when are lore changes okay? I would typically argue that it's when something interesting is done. Obviously with Lan Exeter, I want to see more of the city before I really conclude if the changing away from its more Venice inspirations are more worth it. Because right now, as I said, it looks really cool, but it doesn't have like that Venice element, which I think would have been really cool, because there aren't that many fantasy cities that use Venice as that sort of point of reference. It's why I really hope the Great Canal is still used prominently, and because, to be honest, that's probably the most identifying thing about Kovir when it comes to the books. if it's able to incorporate that, I'd probably be pretty happy with even stuff like them removing things like, as I said, the thinness of the buildings, because, as I said, how many people really care about that when your alternative for an interesting visual design is, you know, the architecture they've gone with. So it's one of those things where I kind of need to see it on the ground, see how much of it is regular conventional streets and how much of it is the canal itself. But yeah, it's a very interesting change. I'm really interested in more about it, and I'm quite excited to see what else is there to do with the city. Partly because of how different it is from what I expected, and yeah. The one final thing, though, is I did realize that the accents, they don't really... Once again, the CDPR seems to have gone with their generalization of accents, where it's not necessarily a regional accent, it's almost more of a class-based accent system that they use. Because there is that element where I now kind of wish that the Koviri accent was Russian. Because I think that would have been really quite distinctive. That would have been... I think that would have been cool. But... oh well. It's not that, but it would have been fun. So that wraps up my second attempt at this video. I'm gonna immediately get to work on editing this because I don't want to be too late to the party. And I will see you guys next time.